Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 400. Can you believe it? We're at 400. I'm yelling into the microphone, but I'm so excited. I can't even believe episode 400 is here. You are done being available for being against yourself. That's what this episode is about, but I am so stinking excited because you know what? Before I started this podcast, I couldn't have even imagined having a podcast. Some of you have heard me talk about it years and years ago before when I became a police officer. I had a tough time talking on the microphone, like getting the mic up and talking in front of everybody. It was just in front of other law enforcement, but I was mortified. I didn't like the sound of my voice. And so I didn't even want to do that. By the fact we're here today, 400 episodes into the podcast, it feels like a huge celebration. I am so stinking excited. Thank you for rocking this journey with me. I can't wait to get into it and to talk about how we're done being available for being against ourselves. Because, yeah, I'm for you. I'm for me. Let's do this.
Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
What's ordinary? What's badass? Let's talk about it. So, I'll tell you what's very ordinary is that I recorded the podcast episode and didn't do an intro or outro. I just kind of blurted out what I had to say. It was a rough edit. I was listening back and I was like, what was I doing or what was I thinking? So here I am redoing the intro and the outro for what's ordinary and what's badass. But, that's life. Okay, so let's talk about what feels ordinary, what feels badass. The ordinary to me right now feels like the grind of the everyday. It feels like the checklists. I'm so tired of the checklists. I'm tired of it, but I know it's a good thing. But sometimes that's like, ugh, just, gotta check off certain things every day, gotta get certain things done. Been working on my Spanish, so yeah, I'll tell you about that more in a second. I kind of mentioned it lightly in the last episode about a trip coming up. But yeah, the ordinary definitely feels like checking all the boxes, getting all the things done, getting my Spanish done for the day. I've been working on my course stuff. So doing all that stuff, that seems ordinary. I don't know. I haven't traditionally been a big checklist person, but when I do, I think I get more done. I'm trying to think. There was a John Lee Dumas journal. I haven't done it lately, but it's like the Freedom Journal. He has a couple journals, but it's like every day you write three things down that you want to do, and then you get that done. And then at the end of the day, you feel much better. At least you checked off three things that you wanted to get done. So I've been doing that in my Growth Day app, and yeah, it's the same type of thing. Just checking off every day the things that you want to get done. It's helpful for making progress, for taking steps forward. But again, it feels like the ordinary. It feels like the everyday, the monotony of the things that you get done every day. So now what feels badass to me? Oh man. So I said how I was working on my Spanish every day. And last episode I briefly told you about the Camino, but that does feel badass. So I'm gonna do the Camino de Santiago, the way. There's several different names for it. And so yeah, I'm gonna fly into Madrid and then walk for 2 weeks. And I'll be walking like 10 to 18 miles a day. It seems a little daunting. Not gonna lie, but also exciting. Like, I think I'll definitely feel like a badass, and it just gives a lot of time to reset and reflect. And once I complete it, and I've done 10 to 18 miles every day, that's gonna feel pretty badass. And hopefully, then I'll want to do the full thing. So, I don't think I've told you, but like doing the Camino has always been on my bucket list. It's been something I wanted to do, but the full thing is like 35 days. And so that's a lot of time to take off work. So I'm not doing that right now. But I had listened to a podcast and they're like, okay, you have this bucket list thing that you may or may not ever do. Is there a smaller version you can do of it? Is there a small chunk you can take from it? And so then that got me thinking, like, oh yeah, people do the Camino all the time for like a week, 2 weeks, whatever. So then I was like, why don't you do it for 2 weeks? And then that got me super excited. So yeah, I can't wait. I'm gonna do the 2 weeks and then hopefully I'll come back in the future and do the full 35 days. Heck, there's three different routes. I think three different countries, maybe Spain, Portugal, France maybe is the other one. Yeah, so there's three different routes you can go, but I am super excited about it. That will feel badass once I complete that. So I've been walking a ton and that's what I've been working towards. Yeah. But what feels ordinary in your life? What feels badass in your life? Hit me up on Instagram at ordinary to badass. You can DM me, you can throw it in your stories. Tell me what is feeling ordinary and what is feeling badass in your life. Okay, what's ordinary? What's badass? Let's talk about it. So I'll tell you what's very ordinary is that I recorded the podcast episode and didn't do an intro or outro. I just kind of blurted out what I had to say, and it was rough. It was a rough edit. It was a rough whatever. And I was listening back and I was like, what was I doing or what was I thinking? So here I am redoing the intro and the outro for what's ordinary and what's badass, but that's life. Before we move on from what's ordinary, what's badass, and into the episode and into the other good stuff, I just want to say sometimes what's ordinary, what's badass, it's different for you and me, right? Like we have different opinions of what's ordinary and what's badass. Sometimes you're not going to feel badass, or like there needs to be a place to celebrate it when you do feel badass. We need to be able to say it to each other, right? Or say what's going on with us. And so that's what I hope you get from these segments is knowing that, yes, you are both ordinary and you are badass. But sometimes the badass is built in the ordinary. Those are more badass than the badass days. The in and the outs, the small little details. That's what make those big accomplishments that feel so cool. It's not that one thing you accomplish that's actually badass. It's in those ordinary days, the things you do day in and day out that aren't seen, that aren't recognized. Heck, you might not even see them or recognize them. But it's the habits you build every single day that makes you so freaking badass. I just had to say that because I think you're a badass and I just worry that you don't recognize it. Okay, with that, let's get to the episode. Hey, badass, welcome to episode 400 of the Ordinary to Badass podcast. Can you believe it? I know I can't. I'm freaking pumped in case you can't tell. So recently I heard a quote from author Tracy Litt, and she said, "You're done being available for being against yourself." And I had to write it down. I freaking love it. And let's be real. So many women are their own worst enemy. We tear ourselves down. We second guess every decision we make. And we play small, even though we have everything that it takes to take the lead. We've got all of the skills, we've got all of the charisma, all the energy. We have everything that's needed, but yet we still play small. So we're going to go to Bridget Jones here. In Bridget Jones's diary, she spent half her energy obsessing over her weight, her career, her love life. She's constantly just beating herself up, being so hard on herself. And yet, what made her unforgettable wasn't her perfection. It was her honesty, her awkward charm, and the fact that she was real. People connected to her because of her flaws, not in spite of them. So why are we so hard on ourselves? It builds connection when people are vulnerable, or they don't have to show up so perfect. Women leaders do this all the time. We focus on what we aren't instead of focusing on what we are. I've seen amazing women earn promotions and then talk themselves right out of it. Other people have raved about them, admired them, respected them even. They were making an impact. But in their own heads, they were convinced that they weren't enough. And you know what? Some of them even gave up. They squandered the opportunity. Not because they lacked skills, but because they lacked self-belief. And if I'm being honest, it breaks my heart. Here's the thing, women lead differently than men, and that's not a bad thing. It's about balance. One woman created bingo cards, and it was an office challenge. May or may not have involved Nerf guns. Another gave out fidget spinner badges. And guess what? Years later, I still have that on my desk and people admire it all the time. It was a cool gift. Someone that messaged me on Instagram told me about how she does dinner for her squad all the time or like once a year. Takes them out to an expensive restaurant and builds camaraderie. And someone else reached out to me and told me she puts on sticky notes like on their coffee mugs, cheering them on, telling them to keep going. They're doing a good job. Guess what? Those seemingly little touches build a real connection. They make people feel seen and valued. Just because nobody else is doing it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. In fact, that's exactly why you should. That different way of leading, it might be the exact thing that your team needs. So I think we should reframe our mistakes. So let me ask you this. What if you just assumed that you made the best decision with the information that you had? Stop assuming that because you're doing it different than the guys do it, that it means you're making a mistake. Because here's the truth. You are done being available for being against yourself. That inner critic that's always trying to shrink you down, she doesn't get a seat at the table. Not anymore, anyway. How would you respond if your best friend was being hard on herself? My guess is you'd probably be her biggest cheerleader. So I want you to talk to yourself that way. When you catch yourself being hard on yourself, ask, what would I say to my best friend if she told me this? Then tell yourself the same. If you have kids in the car, maybe hit pause, listen to this part later, or fast forward 15, 30 seconds. But there's an old school TikTok and it goes, bitch, you're doing a good job. And they sing that song. It's just a fun little song. Go to TikTok, type those words in the search bar, and you'll find it. Every time there's a bunch of different people that made like remixes of it, but every time I watch it, it makes me smile. It makes me laugh. You need to remind yourself that you're doing a good job. So, at the beginning of this episode, I mentioned Bridget Jones, but let's just do another more up-to-date one. What about Ted Lasso? And let me tell you, I did not want to like Ted Lasso. Everybody kept telling me about it. It was all the buzz. Everybody kept saying, you gotta see it. And I was like, ugh, gross. I didn't know anything about it. I just didn't like it because like everybody kept harping on it, right? Well, I did watch it, and guess what? I loved it. Anyway, I digress. Ted Lasso, he was constantly underestimated. People thought he wasn't qualified, and yet his positivity and people first leadership made him unforgettable, likable even. His different approach to things was a superpower. He kept putting a handwritten sign up on the locker room wall and saying, believe. And like, it seems so corny, or people can be like, ugh, whatever, believe. But like, over time, it made a difference. So believe in yourself. Put up a sign. I don't care. Be like Ted Lasso. Put up a sign in your bathroom. Believe. Handwritten sign, all the better. But you know what? People had written Ted Lasso off because he didn't fit the mold. But you know what? It was his heart, his humor, his people first approach that turned the doubters into believers. Same for Bridget. Same for you. Because here's the truth, you don't need to be perfect to lead. You need to stop being against yourself and step into the role that you're meant for. I want to know what you're struggling with. Head on over to Instagram and DM me at Ordinary to Badass. Type in your question. I want to hear from you. The world doesn't need another carbon copy leader. The world needs you. And with that, we'll end our show. Tell the badass woman out there staying in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass and get the chance to be on a future spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.